So when you guys have found yourselves serving two masters, because I have found myself serving two masters, all of us have, I think, done that. What brings you back to serving the Lord? What is it that brings us back to serving the Lord? A swift kick in the head. So a swift kick in the head, kind of like that. We hope it's not like that, okay? That is a picture or a statue by the monastery where I took those other pictures. And so this is the monastery that commemorates this battle there. We do not know that that's the exact spot that the battle took place, but it has this overlook that is obviously very spectacular, you can see. And if you were to look the other way, you could see all the way south and to the Mediterranean that way. So it's actually quite a prominent point, but this is the commemoration. So that's Elijah, and that's one of the prophets of Baal below his feet. So that could be an example of a kick in the head, and sometimes we get that. Okay, what else? What else gets us, can bring us back to serving the Lord? God's Word is powerful, okay? How does that God's Word do that for you, Linda? Okay, so we sometimes, that might be the kick in the head, or it might be the encouragement that we need too. Good, okay. What else? I had somebody else had a hand back here. A good Christian friend. Isn't doing it for you. So who is giving you that awareness? God is doing that. So God comes and speaks to you and gives you that awareness. I want you to just keep that statement in mind, okay? Because that's really good. James 4:6. Read 4:6 again, please. Oh, you lost James. Oh no, we lost James. He's right there. So sometimes the grace of God might actually be that kick in the head, and sometimes it's that encouragement. But he gives us more grace. So when we find ourselves kind of befriending the world or starting to serve two masters, what we rely on then, more than anything, is God's grace. And that grace might come through a friend who's talking to us. Now, we understand that there are means of grace by which we receive the forgiveness and the life that God has promised to us, and that's God's Word and His sacraments. Very objective means, but grace can come in these other forms as well that will lead us back to those objective means whereby God gives us that forgiveness. So when we're serving two masters, it's really that idea of grace that can help us in our struggle. And I think that's really important, because I don't know if any of you have done this before, but as a pastor, I hear this. And when people go through a struggle and they know that they're serving something else or something is becoming their friend, and God is here, and our sermon series this month is Unashamed. And it's this idea that, so somehow I'm ashamed to go back to God. And it's like he's going to be really mad at me, or if I come back to church, I haven't been here, lightning's going to strike, and all those kinds of things. And the idea is that what we're really doing is we're separating ourselves from the very thing that's going to help us. And so we want help, but we almost think that we have to help ourselves and do something for ourselves before we can get over here. So when we look at the story of Mount Carmel and Elijah, remember, he was there to defeat the prophets of Baal, but the real purpose of the whole event was for the people, for them to see who God really was. And so God acted through Elijah and through this miraculous, spectacular means of this contest for the people to see where and who God really is. And in a way, there's actually an element of grace in that for the people. Because God could have, and would have actually been very right in doing so, just let them continue to have a drought and let them suffer for all their false gods and everything else, and just said, that's enough, I leave you to that. But he didn't. Instead, he sent Elijah into the land and with grace destroyed the prophets to draw his people back to himself. You guys, does that make sense in the story? Okay, so that's what's going on. It's a great message for us. There's only one other thing I want to share with this, and I think this is really kind of a neat thing in this story. And look at verses 41. Let's read the rest of the story. 1 Kings 18, 41 through chapter 19, verse 8. If somebody can read that good and loud for us. I'll go ahead. And Elijah said to Ahab, "Go up and eat and drink, for there is the sound of the rushing of rain." So Ahab went up to eat and to drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Mount Carmel, and he bowed himself down on the earth and put his face between his knees. And he said to his servant, "Go up now, look toward the sea." Okay? Look toward the sea. And he went up and looked and said, "There's nothing." And he said, "Go again." 7 times. And at the 7th time he said, "Behold, a little cloud like a man's hand is rising from the sea." That's haze. You can see just little clouds. And it actually did rain at Caesarea Maritima, Haifa, on the day that we were there. It was north of us, but everybody was stunned because it never rains in August. And it actually had a little bit of rain. But you can see, look across the sea, there's nothing there. And then he went up, and there was a little cloud, and a little cloud like a man's hand is rising from the sea. And he said, Go up, say to Ahab, "Prepare your chariot and go down, lest the rain stop you." And in a little while the heavens grew black with the clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. And Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. Okay? Jezreel is off the map over in this direction, along this path. Okay? And the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he gathered up his garment and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel, which is good because that way they would go slower in his chariots going through the mud, and Elijah could get ahead of Ahab. And the reason for that is chapter 19. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." The life of those folks right there. All right. Then he was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, all the way at the southern end of Israel. I got a different map for you. So here's Mount Carmel, sitting right here. When you see the sea, that's what you're looking at. When you see the valley, that's what you're looking at right there. Okay? And Elijah went from here, Jezreel, all the way down to Beersheba, whole other end of the country. Okay? And he went down to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, came and sat down under a broom tree, and then the story goes, it continues, it goes all the way down. After 40 days and 40 nights, he gets down to Mount Horeb, the Mount of God, which is Mount Sinai, which is going to be all the way down here. So, why did it start to rain? Kind of from the beginning of this whole story, why did it start to rain? Okay? Show the power of God, because they were worshiping false gods. All right? So what I want you to do is just kind of take a quick look, a little scan from chapters 17 through 19. And I want you to tell me how many days Elijah was in Israel. Okay? How many days, this whole time, how many days was he actually in Israel? days was he actually in Israel? Look at chapter 17. All right, the Lord, Elijah, he said to Ahab, so he had to go to Ahab. Okay, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew or rain for these years except by my word. And the word of the Lord came to him, depart from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, or Cherith, okay, which is east of the Jordan, right? Then he came back with the contest, and then he left. How many days was he in Israel? That's what best we can tell, 2 days. Because then he goes to Beersheba. Look where Beersheba is. It's not in Israel. So he left from there, came down. Maybe there's a day of travel in there. But in essence, his ministry with Ahab was how many days? Maybe that's a better way to say it. 2 days. We hear all this stuff with Elijah, but 2 days. When he goes up here, okay, the widow of Zarephath, and up here, that's outside of Israel. 2 real days of ministry in all of Israel in that whole period of time. What does that tell us? Okay. Okay. Good. Did Elijah have a huge impact on Israel? Yeah. One day he makes it so it doesn't rain for 3 years, and the next day he wipes out all the prophets of Baal. That's a lot in 2 days. Oh. God was working and through all this. Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting because we see that there's a big impact. And I think we can learn a little lesson in here. And that is that God can do great things in small moments. All right? Like the quality versus the quantity. Look at Luke 2:36. And somebody else look at Acts chapter 9 through 18. Absolutely. Good, good. Okay, somebody read Luke 2:36. Probably heard this before. Anybody got that one? Okay. Prophetess Anna. That's kind of it. We hear her reference, and she makes the statement. She tells Mary, and a sword will pierce your heart too, prophesying the crucifixion. Do you think that for Mary, that brief encounter of just a small moment with Anna had a huge impact on Mary? I mean, can't see it for sure, but the fact that it's in the Gospel of Luke, and Mary, as she's seeing all this happen, you think she might have remembered what Anna said? Yeah. So, small little moment, but the Bible thinks it's significant enough that it records it, and it obviously is a pretty significant thing. Acts chapter 9, 9 through 18. Sounds like a very small little moment. Ananias, it's the only place we're going to hear about Ananias. There's another Ananias, but that was chapter 5, and he was already dead. So this is a different Ananias. And you get that little moment. How important was that moment? What did God do in that little brief moment with Ananias? Started a ministry of which we read all those scriptures, and the gospel went to the ends of the earth. Just some humble guy who's just minding his own business, and God says, I need you to do this. Okay, and that's it. You don't hear from Ananias and the rest of the scriptures anymore, but that's it. And so what can we learn? What can we learn from those stories, but the story of Elijah? When we see that Elijah on Mount Carmel, and just 2 days of ministry, and look what God did. What are some things we can learn from that and everything else we talked about? What are some things we can learn from Elijah about what serving God looks like? And today we're talking about women in mission and serving God. So we can learn some things from Elijah about what serving God looks like. What are some thoughts that you guys have? Small, simple things. Right. Yep. Good. Good answer. What else? Other thoughts? Okay. All right. Good. Anything else? What other thoughts? Yeah, Rick. Right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. That's exactly right. It's a great story. I think that is so true. Yeah, we might not be the one for all of them, but we might be the one. Ananias was the one with Paul, and then Paul did all the rest. Yeah, good. All right, so I think we can learn that when we look at Elijah, he was pretty outnumbered. Sometimes we might feel very outnumbered in our world today, at our workplace, maybe kids at school, in our community, that maybe we stand alone in some of our views and our biblical perspectives and how we live our lives. Being a servant of God can sometimes mean being outnumbered. Sometimes it might mean only having brief moments to really show who it is that we serve. Okay? We might only have those little moments, and yet with God's direction, they can have huge impact. All right? So we trust that to God's direction on it. Okay? Any other questions, comments about Mount Carmel and Elijah? All right. So that took place somewhere 800s, 900s BC. We're going to guess somewhere in there. Unfortunately for the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, they didn't learn. So they said there was a change. Elisha came in, did ministry, but eventually Israel kept worshiping false gods. And we can go through the prophets, especially like through Amos and some of the others, and see that there was destruction. The destruction came in the form of the Assyrians, okay? And the Assyrians would have been, so this is Damascus, modern-day Syria, Damascus. Aram is Syria, that area. And Assyria would have been farther up over here, but included this. And they came down in a wave, and between Tiglath-Pileser and Sennacherib and others, they came and overtook Israel. in the year 701, all right, after they had conquered the northern kingdom, it didn't take too much more for them to come down and conquer Judah. If you're Assyria and you've taken all of these things, all right, this little spot here is not a particularly threatening kind of thing. And what would be the advantage if you were the Assyrians to come and take all of this area? What are their eyes really on? What do you think? Trade route, and okay, Philistia. This is all the trade route. That's essentially what all this is. And what if we kept going around the coast? What's sitting over here? Egypt. That's their biggest threat. Okay? So for the Assyrians, Egypt is the threat. So the more they can put barriers and buffers and everything between themselves up here and use this land, which becomes a source of income and strategic security against Egypt, they're going to do that. All right? And if you were to look down here, if I were the Assyrian army and I'm coming through here, there's one particular point that is the key for this area. So we've already taken Israel. Remember, we talked about Gezer and the like, which is going to be up here. There's Beth Shemesh, so that's the Sorek Valley. All right? And right over here is Gezer. All right? In fact, I think that's the sign for it right there. Okay? So the next spot that's going to come down, and you can see that there's nothing else past it on the way all the way down to Egypt, is Lachish. Okay? Lachish was a fort, and Lachish was the one that commanded a view and control of the trade route. This is the road. So Scott was right on. The international trade route came right through here. All right? Kind of right on the border between Philistia, the Philistines, and Judah. The trade route is right through there. And if you go along the trade route, which keeps going through here, you notice there's nothing else along the trade route. Lachish is the linchpin, the entrance, the dividing between Egypt and then into Israel, to Judah and Israel. Okay? So we're going to talk about Lachish because Lachish is very significant during this time of a divided kingdom and the destruction of Israel. Okay? Israel's already destroyed, but it affects Judah and it affects other things. Okay? So we're going to talk about Lachish. Let's look in our Bibles and let's read what the Bible has to say about Lachish. Let's start with Joshua chapter 10. Okay, somebody read verse 3 and then read verse 32. Joshua 10. Chapter 10, verse 3. Okay, so so you see there is one of the Canaanite kings. Okay. Go back to that for a second. Open up. Yeah, I'll go ahead and read 5, and then let's go to verse 32. Okay, and so this is the fear that these guys have about. They've seen what's happened to. They've seen what's happened to. They've seen what's happened to Jericho. They've seen what's happened to Ai, and now they're concerned. The Gibeonites have deceived Joshua and essentially gotten a protection from them, and so these Canaanite kings, which includes the one from down in Lachish, now go to Gibeon, and Gibeon is right about here. Okay, so they go up there. So there's a reference to Lachish. Verse 32. Okay, and so Lachish has been excavated, all right, and that is Lachish. That is Tel Lachish there. I apologize for the blue. That is a picture taken out of my bus window, but that is the Tel, and this is the whole Tel right through here. You can see remnants of ruins and fort here, remnants of ruin and fort here. And on the backside, it was cut all the way down, and they found the remnants of the old Canaanite fort that was there and had been destroyed. And the timing of it is similar to the timing of Hatzor that we talked about before. So once again, kind of clarifying the time frame of the Exodus and the conquest. So that is Lachish. Let's go to 2 Kings 18, and let's read a little bit more about the significance of this place. Okay, and if everybody knows from Isaiah chapter 6, in the year that King Uzziah died, okay, and then Elijah has his vision. When Uzziah died, Hezekiah took over. Okay, so you get Hezekiah, and this is the story that's now coming up. So let's look at 2 Kings 18, and let's just start reading through this. Somebody want to begin at verse 1, and I'll tell you when to go. Just one quick pause. There is a co-regency, so don't be confused by some of the names. There is a co-regency during some of this time. Go ahead. Okay, I'll go ahead and pick up. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. Okay, Samaria, capital right here. And this whole area also being known as Samaria. Samaria was taken. The king of Assyria carried the Israelites away to Assyria and put them in Halah and on the Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. Okay? Carried them away, and they came way over here, I mean, long way from their land. Because they did not obey the voice of the Lord their God. So the king did this because of their disobedience to God. But transgressed his covenant, even all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded. They neither listened nor obeyed. So, siege taken. If you're in Jerusalem, look how close Jerusalem is, and all these people have just been defeated, and like the entire population has pretty much just been moved. Are you going to be a little nervous? I mean, you could barely handle them yourselves. Previously, you had to get Aram to fight war to keep them off of your borders. You're going to be a little nervous. So let's continue with the story, and then we'll read this and we'll stop. Verse 13, in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish. So Sennacherib has come down. He's followed the battle. He's sitting down here at Lachish, okay, saying, I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I will bear. And the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and the treasuries of the king's house. At that time, Hezekiah stripped the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the doorposts that Hezekiah, king of Judah, had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Assyria. Now we'll stop right there. This sounds pretty radical from Hezekiah. It almost sounds different than the beginning of the chapter. Okay? Why is Hezekiah doing all this? Why is he doing all this? Okay? I don't know if you can see that. Okay? That those are people impaled on poles. Those are people who are being skinned alive. You know where all these are found? On a relief of Sennacherib from his invasion and his destruction of Lachish. So we actually have Sennacherib's testimony about what happened in Lachish. So think about Hezekiah, all right? And these are his people. I mean, this is the fort in Judah. And he hasn't gone to Jerusalem yet, because Jerusalem isn't really strategically that important. Lachish is, because that's against the Egyptians. And this